Hey everybody, IcyCat here. Lots of recent changes have come to the way the drones operate in the game. Some of it has been done for balancing reasons, some of it for quality of life changes, but does that mean they were necessarily good changes? How have they impacted the game and changed the way we play? Let's talk about it next. Before we get too far into the video, I just wanted to do a quick mention for my sponsor, GamerLink. It's a great app you can use to find and connect with other players in the Siege community. GamerLink supports over 200 games across all major platforms. It's super user-friendly and has excellent support if you need it. You can even find or create your own clan, recruit members, build your own team, manage your roster, and more. If you want to know more, there's a link in the video description down below. Drones have gotten a few changes since the game first released. Some were new features, like adding the red north indicator with compass to the drone HUD, making team callouts while in drone view a lot easier and more intuitive. Others came in the form of meta-shifting changes to the way Twitch's drone worked in the prep phase that can now harass and destroy gadgets before the attack phase even begins. With Year 2 Season 3, we now get some new changes to drones. We've been playing with the new changes for the last week or two already, but were they necessarily good changes? The first one we'll talk about is that the attacking team now gets to use both of their drones simultaneously without destroying the first one they tossed out, and having the ability to switch between them. This means that theoretically, attackers can have up to 10 camera drones in the field, provided none of them get shot. On the surface, this is a good change, because drones can and do often get shot during the prep phase. But if you manage to score a decent hiding spot, you wouldn't want to destroy that drone just so you could toss out a new one to check and see if the room you're about to enter is clear. The attacking team in general has always lacked a little bit in terms of intel as compared to the defenders, and while part of that was intentional balancing, once the game meta shifted to heavy roaming on defense, suddenly that limited attacker intel was a bit more of a liability once defense became more aggressive and more spread out across the map. Jackal was introduced as an attempt to counter the roaming meta with the footprint tracking ability, and did give attackers one more tool to use, but it was limited to only one specific operator. Overall, giving the ability to the attacking team to have both drones in play at once is meant to take that to the next step while allowing the entire team to contribute to the intel network. It's a good and overall useful change, again, provided the drones don't get shot. And that's where we come into the downside of this. The other change they made to the meta this season is that your drones and cameras no longer automatically ID operators if they have a clear line of sight on them for a few seconds. You now have to manually scan them, or else the operator IDs for the opposing team will just remain as unknown question marks for the whole round. Of course, doing so immediately notifies them that they've been scanned, and so they turn to look for your drone as you've now drawn attention to yourself. Intentionally scanning enemies and making them chase after your drone or otherwise distract them from setting up during the prep phase is a valid tactic, but before it was a little bit more optional. I mean, yeah, it's up to you. If you want, you can scan the enemy or not, but now there's kind of a downside if you don't. It's not a big deal, you can play the round and leave the enemy team unidentified if you want to, but it does make callouts a little easier when you know who you're dealing with and which operators aren't in play anymore versus which ones are as they get taken out. So there is an incentive for doing so, even if it's not the biggest deal in the world. Ubisoft said the reason for changing this was that players could ID enemies they didn't even know were there by passively viewing a camera, and that essentially it was unfair to ID enemies you didn't even know you could see. I'm not sure how valid that reason is. You can still sort of do the same thing now by actively scanning for enemies, and they can still pop up even if you didn't realize they were there. The only difference now is that they'll be notified they were spotted and will now know to hunt for your drone, whereas before it could be done more subtly. So is this a good change or not? Honestly, I'm not a fan of it. Even if you exercise good discipline and choose not to tag someone and keep your drone hidden, it just gives one more reason for someone else to tag on your drone for you so they get some points and get that ID. And then your careful drone placement is gone now as they start looking for the thing. During the prep phase, you may not have gotten your drone shot, but as other random players do, and they change perspective to your drone, it now gives them one more reason to start tagging away then too, increasing your odds of being noticed and taken out. To be clear, these are all problems that could happen before, but now not having an enemy ID unless they are actively scanned just increases this sort of thing, especially when paired up with random players who don't communicate. It'd be one thing if the choice to scan or not were up to you, but as players observe your drone, random people get to make that call for you, and the reasons for them thinking they can do so have now increased with this change. Another change came to drones, and it's somewhat of a mixed blessing. You can now tilt your drone view higher than you could before. Now, if you're Twitch, this is great. Sometimes you couldn't quite get the right angle to hit a gadget or camera and would have to back up until the vertical elevation lined up. Now you can be more underneath something and still line up the shot. It's not perfectly vertical, but it's a very good quality of life change that makes lining up shots way easier without having to reposition. But this change affects all the other drones too. For a viewing experience, this is a good thing. Tilting higher means you can see higher, and thus the camera can give more useful intel. But this is a double-edged sword. The degree of tilt on the drone also affects its jump profile. If you want to have your drone jump forward, look forward. If you want to have it jump high, look up. The higher you look, the more height your jump gains at the expense of forward momentum. Unfortunately now, with the higher tilt, it's actually pretty easy to cancel out your forward movement on a jump almost entirely. Previously, even at maximum tilt, you would still move forward at least a little, but now it's like you nearly stall out and create awkward vertical jumps that have little purpose. Now we have to all kind of relearn the angle needed to hit some jumps, and sure, that'll get easier with time, but since the max tilt jump really no longer moves you forward, was this even a good change? Yes and no. It does mean that some jump angles might have to be accounted for by not tilting as steeply as you used to, but like I said, that'll come with time and eventually become second nature again. While there is very, very little forward momentum on maximum tilt jumps, there is in fact just a little bit. This can make it easier to drive right up to the base of something like a bookshelf and climb the shelves straight up with a couple of jumps, or catch very slight edges without overshooting them. But again, you have to kind of relearn what some of these new capabilities will let you get away with. It makes some things a little trickier, but some things also get a little easier too. This may even open up some new places that drones couldn't get into before, or at least make it a little less difficult to get into. It also hasn't been widely advertised, but a slight quality of life change happened with drones that many didn't even notice. They can actually tilt down now while in passive observer view. It used to be that you could not tilt down beyond the drone's horizon plane. Panning side to side and tilting up from the floor view were always there, but you couldn't tilt down unless the drone was being actively driven. Again, what I'm talking about is when the camera is in passive observer mode. This would lead to situations where someone might do some creative drone parkour and get really high up, and they could tilt down and see what was below, but as soon as someone else tried as an observer only, they could not tilt down far enough to make the drone very useful. Again, you could always tilt down in drive mode, just not really in observer mode. This change is actually a huge quality of life boost, because now observing and either tagging or verbally passing intel to the team through callouts will pay higher yields when drones are placed up high, since that's now finally a useful vantage for supporting teammates. Cameras in general, even on the defensive side, seem to pan and tilt more quickly, though Valkyrie's cameras seem to be really sensitive. Not sure if hers were intended to be quite as twitchy as they are now, or if that'll get a bit smoothed out in a future patch. Well, what do you guys think of the changes we've seen to drones this season? Do you like the attackers being able to use both drones at once? What do you think about having to scan on cameras to get those enemy IDs now? How about the new way the drones jump and view? Let me know in the comments down below, or shoot me a message at IcyCat25 on either Twitter or Facebook. Now, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and be sure to click the notification icon so you're alerted as soon as I upload new content. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.